Hi, this is Ali Arango of Game Visuals. Today I would like to show you how to work with Zdepth in Gdevelop 5. So let's get started. Okay, what you see in front of you is the Gdevelop start screen. When possible, when doing these tutorials, I like to start right from the start screen. First thing we're going to do is select create a new project. This panel here pops up. We're going to scroll down. We're then going to select empty game. Once we click that, we see this project panel popped up here from the side. We're going to focus our attention on scenes, and then this plus right below the scenes button. We're going to click that plus. Now we have this new scene that popped up. This new scene is going to contain our game objects. So we're going to left click on this new scene. And when we did that, now we see this other panel pop up, this objects panel. For this project panel, we can click on this X button and take that project panel away. Just so you know, we can click here and have that project panel come back. I'm going to click the X button again to have that project panel go away. We're going to focus our attention on objects to the right. We're going to click the plus button. When we click this button, we see a bunch of options pop up. We're going to select the sprite option. We're going to go to object name. We're going to change this name to player. We're then going to go to this plus to the right. We're then going to go to the plus to the left side here. And we're going to look for where you have your graphics set up to be your player. I have the graphics set up in this Zdepth tutorial folder, and I'm going to left click on this player here. I'll put these graphics in the description so you can get to these sprites if you want to use these to follow along with the tutorial. With this player graphic selected, I'm going to click open. And now we can see here's our player graphic right here. I want to add a movement or add top-down movement to this player character. This is very easy to do in Gdevelop. I'm going to go up to the top, select behaviors. I'm then going to look to the right and select this plus button. And now we can see a bunch of different behaviors that we can select. I'm going to scroll down. I'm then going to select top-down movement. And then I'm going to scroll down. And all of the default controls are fine. However, I want to turn off this rotate object effect. So I'm going to left click on this check mark next to the rotate object. I'm then going to click apply. And now with that done, I'm going to left click on my player. I'm then going to left click and drag to bring the player onto our workspace. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel back. We can see here's this square that makes up our workspace. Our player character is too big, so I'm going to left click on the player character. I'm going to hold shift. By holding shift and selecting the diagonal corner, we can constrain this player's graphics so the player doesn't deform in a way that we don't want it to. So holding shift, I'm moving my mouse to shrink this player character down. And that size, I think, is good for the player character. Okay, now what we want to do is bring in a building, and we're going to use the player character in the building to show how we're going to set up this Zdepth for this Zdepth tutorial in Gdevelop 5. So I'm going to click on this plus button to the right. I'm going to go very similar to before, select sprite. I'm going to change the name of this to building. I'm then going to click plus to the right and then plus to the left like we did before. I'm then going to look for my building graphics, which is on a folder on my desktop. It's in a Zdepth tutorial folder. I'm then going to click on this building 2 pixels and then click open. Okay, and we don't need to set up any behaviors for this. So we're just going to then click apply. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to left click on this building. We're going to left click and drag to bring the building out. I'm going to hold shift, go to the diagonal corner, very similar to before. Now I'm moving my mouse to scale the building down. I'm going to click on our player character. I'm going to scale the player character down even more. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to left click on the building. I'm going to move this up. I'm then going to right click on the building, select copy, and then right click in a different spot and then paste, because I want to have another version of this building, and that's the easiest way to have another copy of the building and have this building be the same size as this building. Okay, so what is this tutorial about? The easiest way I think is to show you. So I'm going to click the preview button here. Okay, so currently we have our player character. I'm pressing the keys on the keyboard. And you see when I move up to the building, I want to, where Gdevelop is a 2D game engine, what I want to do is to make it seem like the player is going up onto the building, and then when the player gets far enough, I want the player to move to the back of the building. But the way things are set up right now, the player is on the layer beneath the building graphics, and the building graphics are in front. What I want to happen to make this seem more like the player is in 3D space is for when the player comes up to the building to about here, the player's in front of the building, and then when the player moves up more, he moves in back of the building. So that's pretty much what this tutorial is about. Okay, here in Gdevelop, where we're at now is where we set up our graphics. What we want to do is set up the programming to make what we want to happen with Zdepth actually work. So I'm going to go to the new scene events, and to get this going, we want to go through to this button right here, where we can see when we hover over this button, it says add a new empty event. We're going to left click there. And the way that Gdevelop is set up is you have conditions and actions, and because of the way things are set up where you set your conditions and your actions, you're able to, for the most part, make games as well as other apps without actually coding, as in writing code, and this is spectacular. Conditions basically work where you say when this thing happens, and then action pretty much says what to happen when that thing happens. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to go to add condition. We're going to go down to scene, and then we're going to go to at the beginning of the scene. So we're going to select that, and then the rest of these settings are fine. We're then going to click OK. Okay, so basically we're saying, look, at the beginning of the scene, we want something to happen. So now we're going to click on Add Action to set up what we want to happen. What we want to do is go to Common Action for all objects. So I click there. Now we're going to go to Z Order. And now we're going to click on the Z Order that just popped up underneath Z Order. So now the first thing we want to do is set up where, well, we see this action says modify the Z order of an object. So we're going to select building. Okay, now for the modification sign, we're going to select equal or set to. For this value, what we're going to do is go to this blue button to the right. We're going to left click there. We're going to scroll up to common expressions for all objects. Then we're going to go down to where we see position. We're then going to scroll down to where we see Y position. I'm going to left click on Y position, and then I want to work with the Y position of the building. So I'm going to left click here, and when I left click, you can see here's the graphics that we have available to work with currently. So I'm going to select building. Then I'm going to just click away to get this panel to go away. Then I'm going to select done. Okay, so now we have this value set up, and we could have typed right here building dot Y, the parentheses. However, I like the fact that Gdevelop is set up where it tries to make you actually write as little as code as possible. Okay, so now that we have this, to have this Zdepth actually work, what we need to do is put everything that we see here inside a parentheses. So what that means is we're going to go to the end here. We're going to hold Shift. I'm going to the 0 key while holding Shift to put a parenthesis there. I'm then going to go to the other side of building, hold Shift, and then put a parenthesis there. And then with this done, I'm then going to click OK. Okay, if we want to modify an action, we can double click and we'll go back into that action's settings. I'm going to click OK. We can also click on some of the elements of the action out in our main work area here. So I'm going to click on building right here. And what we need to do is, this is important, after the parentheses, you need a space. We're going to hold shift and press equal to get a plus, a space, and I'm going to press 100. So now we have do equals building y, dot y, parenthesis, space, plus space 100 to the order of building. Okay, when we look back, we have two buildings here. So we want to have our Z depth work for each of our buildings. So what I'm going to do is click here. It's important that when I clicked here, I didn't click on this gray. See how when I click the gray here, we have this blue outline around the gray. I clicked here, so the blue outline is here. This is important for setting up sub events and things like that. So with things clicked onto the blue line is all along here, like you see it. I'm going to go to this plus button here where it says when I hover over it, choose and add an event. I'm going to left click there, and then I'm going to select for each object. And now we have another condition. However, I want this to be a sub condition of at the beginning of the scene, the condition. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to left click on this blue, and I'm just going to drag this over. And now you can see there's a line coming down, like this is indented. So this is a sub condition of this condition here. And sub conditions depend on the conditions to work, and they're useful for when you want something to be connected to the initial condition at the beginning of the scene. You just can make a sub condition. Okay, so with that sub condition, actually what we want to have is to have this code be on this action here. So what we can do very easily is I can right click, select cut, and then right click again and then paste. And now I just moved this code down into this sub condition. Now with this sub condition, see where it says click to choose which objects this event will be repeated. I'm going to left click here. I'm going to click here, and I want this to go on our building. So I'm just going to press the B key. And when I did that, now we see building. I'm going to left click and then just click away. So now this is going to be repeated for each building. And when I say this, I mean this at the beginning of the scene. So we're saying at the beginning of the scene, we want something to happen. And what we're telling is we want this code for the Z order to be set up at the beginning of each scene. Okay, what we want to do now is set up the code for the player. So this will make things, this is the settings we need for the building. So now what we're going to do is we're going to click back up here. So we have this blue outline going right along on this condition here. And the reason why we're doing that is we want a new condition. So we're going to click here, and now we have a new condition here. We want to click add condition. We want to go to keyboard. And then what we want to do is select any key pressed. These other settings are fine. We're going to click OK. And then for the add action, what we can actually do is take this code here and copy this to here. So I'm going to left click here to select this code. I'm then going to right click. And then we can see these options. I'm going to select copy. I'm going to hover right over this add action. I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to select paste. So now we have a copy of that code right here. Okay, the reason why we copied this code was just to make things faster. However, this code is supposed to be for the player, so we need to change from right here we see building as well as here to player. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to change this to player. Then I'm going to click on this building here. I'm going to change this to player as well. Now, the reason why we put in player is just because that's what I named our player character. If you would name the player character something else, you would put that name in. So there is something else we need to change. For our building, we want our code to say plus 100. For our player, we want this to actually say -10. So we're going to click here. And it's important that when you put this in, you want to have after the parentheses space, minus space 10. Okay, so if everything's working correctly, when we move our player should be in front of the building and then gradually go behind the building as we move up. So I'm going to click the preview button here. I'm going to use our arrow keys go up, and you can see the player's in front of the building now. And then eventually he goes to the back of the building. The issue is, though, is that it takes him too long to go to the back. A Labrador in the background dreaming, if you hear sounds over there. But yeah, we want to change that so it works how we want it to work. So I'm going to click here. Okay, so I'm going to go to new scene, back to new scene. Now, when I click on the player, what we're working with is this Z order here. Currently, our player is on number 1. I'm going to change this so he's on Z order 2. I'm going to set the buildings need to be on a higher Z order than him. So I'm going to change them to 4. Or change the 1 to 4 and the other one will be the same. And basically, the way things work as far as the Z order is the higher that you are up, like as far as or lower you're up, like number 1, you would be all the way in the background. Number 2, you would be in the background as far as the Z order. So because this player character is number 2 and these buildings are number 4, the player character would normally be behind these buildings. And the code that we set up makes this Z order change. All right, the reason why I'm telling you that is we want to have things set up so that our player will go to about here, be visible to about here. Then when he moves up, basically move behind the building. So how do we set that up? We're going to click on our building here, and we can see the height is 344 pixels. So what we can do is we're going to go over to this objects panel. We're going to click this plus button. We're going to click sprite to bring in a new sprite. I'm going to name this block for something we're going to do with this later on. I'm going to click this plus button. Now, normally what I did previously in this tutorial was I click plus, then I click plus to the left. This time I'm going to select Edit with Piskel, and this opens up a graph editor that is inside of Gdevelop. It's very nice, and you can actually make graphics to work with Gdevelop in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this color here, make this a blue color. I'm going to go to this paint bucket, fill this area here, and I'm going to name this block. I'm then going to click Save to Gdevelop. I'm then going to click Apply. Okay, so now with this, I'm going to click on this block. I'm then going to left click and drag this out. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to pan my view. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this to the top, almost the top of the building, this block graphic. And I'm going to pull down to about where I want this character to disappear, which is about right here. And we can see that the height of this block is 222. So what I'm going to do, knowing that this is 222, and this is, see how I have this lined up right with here? So what I'm going to do is go to New Scene and Events, and then for this 100, I'm going to change this to round things off to 220. And I'm putting in that 220 because this is 222. So I'm basically using this as a measuring, going from around the top to near where I want the character's Z depth to change so it goes behind the building. So let's see if this works. So I'm going to press the preview button. So now we have our character go over, pressing the arrow keys, go up, and then you can see our character disappeared because it's behind. Now there's our character out the back. And then if we have him come to the side and out to the front, so it actually looks like he's moving in 3D space in a sense, even though he's in a 2D space. Okay, what I want now is I don't want the character to be able to move straight through the building from top to bottom. So what I'm going to do is take this graphic here and I want to line it up in between the roof here and here. So I'm going to shrink this using these controls here. I'm going to make it wider, not too wide. What my thought process here is I want this character to be able to come and move around the side here, move up to here, come behind the building there, but I don't want the character to be able to go straight through the building. So that's why I set up this shape like this is here. And what we're going to do is make it so that this player character here can't move through this block here. Okay, so how are we going to do that? We're going to do that through code, or programming, I should say. I'm going to click on the new scene event. I'm going to click here. I'm clicking here for the purpose of getting this blue outline because I want to make another condition. So I'm going to click add a new empty event, or the button for add a new empty event. When you want something to happen continually in Gdevelop, you can do that by not setting a condition, and Gdevelop will constantly look to make whatever you want to happen. So I'm choosing to not set a condition. I'm going to add action, and then I'm going to go to common action for all objects, and then I'm going to go to position. One of the ways you can make something an obstacle for another object is by selecting this separate two objects. Now the order is important here that you select. There's going to be two selections here. What you want is your player character. If you're setting things up for your player character to not be able to move something, you want that player character, or whatever is movable, you want to still be movable, to be the top object. Whatever is not going to move, you want to be the bottom object. So I'm going to click here, and then I'm going to select block. I'm then going to click OK. Okay, so with this code set up, our player should not be able to move through that block. So let's click the preview button. So now when we move our player, oh, look at that. It's interesting. So our player, everything looks good as far as the top down. Not quite. Need to adjust that block. Okay, so let's go to new scene. I'll click here. And I want to make it so the player can definitely get behind the building. I'm going to go to the new scene event, and for this, let's make this 210. Let's try a preview again. Interesting. So I have things right where this looks good here. So we want the player to be visible here. I definitely don't like how the player's flashing there, so go back to new scene. Let's bring this down. Something like that. Let's try again. Okay, there we go. The player's in front. The player can go to the side. See how his arm is covered up. I want him to be from the top to be able to go so his head is totally behind the building. So we'll click here. Try to preview again. He comes out from the side, and that looks good. Okay, so we want this building to have a similar thing here, similar setup here. And by the way, the reason why you can't see this, if you're like, why is this disappearing? The code is making this disappear. I'm going to right click for now on this copy. I'm going to right click here and select paste. And I did that. I copied and pasted mainly to get a similar size. And now I'm just setting this in a similar position to this block here. I'm going to click the preview button. So everything's working here as well as here. Good. Okay, so let's make it so that you absolutely can't see these block graphics. Or if you were in another setup where you wanted them to be, I don't know, they were like sticking out to the side somewhat so that you don't see these when the scene starts. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to New Events. We're going to click so we see this blue outline around both of these blocks here, because remember that's important as far as setting up the new condition. So I'm going to click on our add a new empty event. I should say new event, not condition. So for the condition, we're going to go to scene. We're going to select at the beginning of the scene. We're then going to select OK. Then we're going to go to add action. We're going to go to common action for all objects. We're going to select visibility. Then we're going to select hide. So now Gdevelop is like, what do you want to hide? Hide the specified object. We're going to select block. So then we're going to click OK. Now we're going to click preview. And our blocks were already hidden before, but if they were sticking out the side, this would definitely make sure that our blocks would be hidden. Okay, in this Zdepth, the setup we have here, this will be used for, like you see, where we have a character with top-down movement and you want the character to seem like it has some kind of 3D depth to it. This also would be useful if you were doing like a beat-em-up game, like a Final Fight type of game where your character was moving from a upper position and then moving down, and the character started being behind the character, and then by the time it got below the character, needed to be in front of the character. Okay guys, that's it for the tutorial. For those of you who liked videos on this channel, share this video with your friends, give this video a thumbs up. And for those of you who are new to this channel, if you like the videos on this channel, you would like to see more, please subscribe, and thank you for viewing.